When you work with SolidWorks, you'll generally be working with three types of files: parts, assemblies, and drawings. We'll be covering each of these in this course, beginning with a focus on creating parts. Parts will be at the center of your designs in SolidWorks. As you'll see later in the course, parts are the basis for creating assemblies and drawings. As we look more closely, we'll see that parts themselves are made up of building blocks called features. There are two types of features: applied features and sketched features. While applied features can be directly applied to parts, sketch features must begin with two-dimensional profiles called sketches. The sketcher is where you create the 2D geometry that will serve as the foundation of three-dimensional features. Sketches are created using simple tools such as lines, rectangles, and circles. These shapes can be defined very precisely using dimensions and something called geometric relations that we'll look at a bit later. First, we'll look at a concept that creates confusion very often for new users: the concept of Edit Sketch mode. By default, when you begin a new part file, you'll be in a mode called Editing Part mode. If you look down here in the corner, you'll see that SolidWorks tells me I'm in Editing Part mode. If you don't see this message bar, go to your View drop-down menu and select Status Bar. Now you should see this bar at the bottom that says Editing Part. In SolidWorks, when you're creating parts, you can be in one of two modes: Editing Part or Editing Sketch. If you keep an eye on the status bar, you'll always know what mode you're currently working in. So why are there two modes? Well, the reason there are two modes is because every feature you create as you build a 3D model falls into one of two categories: either a sketched feature or an applied feature. If you want to create a sketched feature, you have to use Editing Sketch mode. If you want to create an applied feature, you do it in Editing Part mode. Now that you know there are two modes for creating these different types of features, the question is how we switch between the two modes. There are actually several ways. One is to simply begin creating a sketch-based feature. If you take a look at the command manager, there are very few icons that are not grayed out. If I hover my mouse over each icon, you'll notice that the only two available feature commands are the extruded boss and the revolved boss. These are both sketch-based features. I'll select the extruded boss icon and see what happens. Over on the left, you'll see a yellow box prompting me to pick one of the planes which have appeared in the graphics area. You have the option of selecting the front, top, or right plane. Now, whenever SolidWorks wants you to select a plane to sketch on, you'll see a small box next to your pointer. I'll click on the front plane. With the front plane selected as my sketch plane, the status bar down here at the bottom of the screen changes to indicate that I'm now editing a sketch. There are other indicators telling me that I'm in Editing Sketch mode. First of all, a sketch is listed in the Feature Manager tree. You also see these transparent images show up. These are buttons that we'll take a look at a bit later, but also indicate that I'm in Edit Sketch mode. Finally, and most importantly, is that the Command Manager has automatically changed to display the Sketch toolbar. Once you're in Edit Sketch mode, to get out, you can do one of two things. You can click the Exit Sketch button on the Sketch toolbar, or you can click one of the buttons here in the corner. The pencil button is the same as the Exit Sketch button. It simply closes the sketch you're working on. If you click the red X icon, you have the option of discarding any changes you may have made. Earlier, I got into Edit Sketch mode by clicking on the Extruded Boss feature and choosing a sketch plane to begin a sketch for that feature. That is one way of starting a sketch. I can also get into Edit Sketch mode by switching to my sketch tools and clicking the Sketch button on the Sketch toolbar. As you can see, by clicking Sketch, this will also lead to a prompt asking me to select a 2D plane to sketch on. The first sketch tool we'll take a look at is the line. First, notice that the Line tool has a drop-down menu, and it contains the Line tool and the Centerline tool. I'll discuss the Centerline tool in a later lesson. I can also locate the Line tool from Tools, Sketch Entities, or by right-clicking in the graphics area, using the S key shortcut, or using mouse gestures by holding down the right mouse button and dragging to the left. For now, I'll activate the Line tool by clicking the line icon in the drop-down menu or click the main icon itself. As I move the cursor into the graphics area, you see that it has changed to a pencil with a line underneath. This is to let me know which tool is active. If I switch to other tools by clicking on these Sketch Tools icons, you can see the cursor feedback will change. Let me get back to the line tool. To create a line, I click to begin, move my cursor, and click again. After selecting the second time, you can see a point was added, and another line segment has started. This is a convenient way to create a chain of lines. I simply continue to click and more line segments are added. To end the chain of lines, I can right-click and select End Chain from the pop-up menu. Another way to end a chain of lines is to double-click. When you double-click, the last point you added becomes the end of the chain. There is a slight variation to this method of creating geometry that many users prefer. Instead of clicking to begin a line segment, then moving the cursor and clicking again to add a point, you have the option of click dragging. I'll click and keep the mouse button pressed. Then I'll drag to the location where I want the line segment to end and release the button. The difference, as you can see, is that no chain of lines is created, just one segment. For those that don't want to worry about ending chains either by right-clicking or double-clicking, this might be a better method. Other sketch tools work very much like the line tool. Let me clear this sketch by deleting these lines. To delete sketch items, all you have to do is select them and press Delete on your keyboard. This can be an annoying stumbling block that trips up many new users. To select something in SolidWorks, you click on it. However, because I still have the line tool activated, when I click on these lines, I end up beginning a new line. Typically, a new user will notice this, and to try to avoid this new line, they'll bring their cursor back to the beginning very carefully, hoping that SolidWorks will forget all about the new line. The problem with this is that you end up with these little tiny specks of lines that can cause nightmares down the road. To avoid all this trouble, just remember to turn off whatever sketch tool you might have on before you try to select things. Turning a sketch tool off is easy. Either click again on the active tool or click on the select icon, the icon with the picture of the arrow pointer. For those of you that like to use right-click shortcuts, you can also right-click and pick Select from the pop-up menu. Another very popular method to exit from an active tool in SolidWorks and return to the Select tool is to hit the Escape key on your keyboard. Now with the Select tool, I can click on these lines to select them and press Delete on the keyboard to delete them. If you want to select more than one line, just hold down the Control key as you click on the lines. When I press Delete, they all go away. One last trick to selecting items in a sketch. If you have a group of items to select, you can click and drag a box around them to select them all at once. Dragging a box from the left to the right will select any elements that are completely inside of the box. Notice the box selection appears in a solid line. Dragging from the right to left will select any elements inside of the box or crossing the box boundaries. This time, notice the box selection appears with a dashed line. Now that we have a blank sketch, let's look at another common sketch tool. You saw how easy the line tool was to use. The rectangle tool is similar. It too has a drop-down menu and contains a number of methods of creating a rectangle. I'll select the basic corner rectangle. Once activated, all you do is click somewhere to begin the rectangle and click again to end it. If you prefer the click-drag method that we saw earlier, you can use it to create rectangles as well. You will notice in the Property Manager that I can choose to switch to one of the other rectangle tools without having to exit the tool altogether. If you look closely at the icons, you'll see points and a number associated to each point. Each point is a mouse click in the graphics area, and the number is what order the click is in. I'll switch to the Center Rectangle tool, and you'll notice I need the first click to be the middle of the rectangle, and the second click is a corner. I'll move to the graphics area. Click once for the middle and once for a corner. You can also click and drag this tool as well if you prefer. The next rectangle tool is the 3-point corner rectangle. This tool requires 3 clicks, and each click will be a corner of the rectangle. I can also click and drag this tool. I'll click and drag from the first point to the second point. Release the mouse button and click and drag from the second to the third point. Next is the 3-point center rectangle. I'll click once for the center, once for the middle of a side, and once more for a corner. Finally, I have the parallelogram tool, which needs 3 clicks for each of its corners. One more thing about the drop-down menus. If I select the parallelogram from the rectangle drop-down menu, you can see that the parallelogram icon replaces the original corner rectangle in the toolbar. If I want to use the corner rectangle tool that used to open when I selected this icon, I have to open the drop-down menu and select it. Otherwise, the parallelogram icon is now the default tool. This consolidated property manager is also used in the circle and arc tools, which we will discuss in the next lesson. Circles and arcs are defined a bit differently than lines and rectangles. Let's start with a circle. If I open the drop-down menu for the circle tool, you can see that I have the option to create a regular circle or a perimeter circle. I can also access the circle tools from the S key shortcut menu or with mouse gestures. With the regular circle tool activated, I'll click to locate the center, move the cursor, then click again to define the radius of the circle. The click-drag method works as well. Click to define the center, hold down the mouse button, and release it to define the radius. Next, I will switch to the perimeter circle. As you can see from the icon, I need 3 clicks each representing a placement of the outside of the circle. Creating arcs is slightly different. If you notice in the Arc Tool drop-down menu, there are 3 ways to define an arc in SolidWorks: a center point arc, tangent arc, or 3-point arc. If I right-click in the graphics area, you can see that I can also choose sketch tools from the pop-up menu. I can also press S on my keyboard to bring up my shortcut bar, which contains most of my sketch tools. Let's start with the center point arc. I'll activate it by selecting it from the right-click menu. I use the right-click menu quite a bit because it's fast, but also because it's much easier to pick the type of arc you need than trying to remember which of the icons is which on the toolbar. Now that the center point arc is active, I'll click to define the center, and then move the cursor to see a preview of the arc. Notice that there's a line from the center to the cursor. This line is the radius of the arc, but it will also be the beginning of the arc. If I click here, the arc will begin here. Now as I move the cursor, notice the arc is being drawn from the point where I clicked. Once the arc appears the way I want, I'll click once more to finish it. Once again, the steps for a center point arc are: click to define the center, click again to define the starting point of the arc, and one more click to finish. The next type of arc is the tangent arc. As the name implies, this arc has to be tangent to something. If I activate it and click in Open Space, SolidWorks will let me know that this arc has to be attached to something. To continue with this example, let me first sketch a line. Now we can use the line as the starting point of the tangent arc. I'll click on the end point of the line and drag the cursor away. You immediately see a preview of the tangent arc. To finish the arc, I'll just click once again. There are some options available as you sketch the arc. Let's sketch another one on the other end of the line. After clicking the end of the line, if I move the cursor away from the line, I'll get a tangent arc just like the first time. However, if I return the cursor back to the starting point and move it toward the line, notice I get a tangent arc in the opposite direction. If I return the cursor once more and move my cursor away from the line in a perpendicular direction, I'll get a perpendicular arc. So even though the arc is called a tangent arc, there are several different results you can get, including a perpendicular arc. The last type of arc is the 3-point arc. Once the 3-point arc sketch tool is active, you click to begin the arc, and click again to end the arc. So far, the beginning and end of the arc have been established, but the arc itself is yet to be defined. By simply moving the cursor from one side to the other, I can define the position and size of the arc. When the preview looks okay, you click once more to finish. So the 3-point arc is defined by clicking 3 times. Once to start the arc, once to end it, and a third time to define its size. There is one additional and very useful method to create an arc that does not appear on the Sketch toolbar. It's called Sketch Auto Transition and is accessed from the Line tool. Begin a sketch line and to switch to an arc, simply move your cursor back to the beginning of the line segment and move your cursor off in the direction you would like the arc to continue. Notice the Line tool has switched to an arc. You can control the direction of the arc by moving your mouse in different direction from starting point. After completing the arc, the Sketch Line tool is reactivated. These are the basic and most often used sketch tools. There are many others, and later in this lesson, we'll take a look at several more of them. But first, let's take a look at how to control sketches using something called relations.